everybody out doing what I can as a reeve with responsibility. I felt that reading is important. It's probably actually one of the bigger aspects when it comes to our combat and our fighting, because without the referees, mistakes can happen. Something might happen where there's a safety issue. Reeves are there to help step in, make sure other people understand what's going on, separate, make sure everyone's safe. It's always just been it's a very important role amongst the park in of itself. So because of that passion, I want to help other people. I'm always on the sidelines with my reeve sash and stuff, watching everybody fight, and it just puts a smile on my face and all that. So thus here I am taking a reeves class. That way you guys can share in this lovely passion I have for it. All right. So introductions out of the side. As I said, this is kind of like a reeving 101. First, I'll just talk about like what a reeve's responsibilities are and what they do, and then kind of work down into both the difference between a tournament reeve and a battle game reeve. So basically, reeving are the judges or referees of Amtgard. Whenever we have tournaments, battle games, or anything that involves our combat, a reeve should be present there, so that way they can monitor the game flow of itself. Basically, they have the final say in decisions. Amtgard does thrive upon our honor code and stuff. You know, we don't call each other's hits. We only are accountable for ourselves. But whenever there is a question, it happens often, that's what the reeve does. They're the final say in the law. Even if it's just not even a shot, it can be rule discussions. It can be mechanics of how things are flowing. Regardless, the reeve is the final say. So when they're reeving, their responsibilities are to basically make sure everyone's having fun. That's what reeving is. It's just making sure everyone has fun. You want to make sure that everyone's following the rules. Make sure that there isn't any discrepancies going on, or if someone's speaking too quiet during battle games, you can have them speak up louder, clarify things. If people have rules questions, they can come and speak to a reeve as well. It happens very often, but reeves do have to make the tough calls at points. Again, sometimes we just don't know what's going on. So when they're breaking this final say, they have to make these tough decisions at the point. But when you make a call as a reeve, it's fine if you're not 100% accurate on it. It's just make a call that will keep everybody happy and moving the game slowly. Take a look at the notes later, and then if you are mistaken, make a note for it for next time. Get better. It's not necessarily about being a rule, knowing the rules 100%, but it's just about keeping things flowing. So that being said, there's also the Guild Master of Reeves. They have a little bit more responsibilities versus just a normal everyday reeve. The Guild Master of Reeves, at least with our kingdom and the rules of play, they help design Reeves tests. In order to reeve, you have to make sure that you're Reeves qualified and all that you understand a basic understanding of the rules. Also, Guild Master Reeves can help out with park's local champions during weapon checks. That's if anything, that's something to keep in mind. They'll always make sure weapons are safe and as well. Not just the champion's responsibility, but their assistance to it at that point. So, going from responsibilities, looking at to tournament reeving, as I've stated in the past, their responsibility is that final say. During a tournament, usually what happens is you have two people squaring up, and you'll just be there watching them, keeping a good distance, make sure you're not too far, not too close, so that you interfere, but enough so that way you can watch the combat and see how the shots are interacting. Tournament reeving is a little fairly simpler than battle games, mainly for that fact that you're just looking for shots. If you want to work on your shot calling as a reeve, tournaments is where you want to do it. So volunteer for tournaments if you can for that. If that's something you want to work on. Let me see here. But as exchanges happen, you'll see where it is. You'll again mostly leave it to the opponents on their own honor code. But if you see something unclear, this is where we come to those tough decisions. you still have to speak out during tournaments and the like. So if you see a shot that you thought connected, you'll have that final say to step in and say what's going on. Again, if there is arguments or anything about it, that's what you are. You're that final say. Reeves. You don't argue towards Reeves. So that being said, in the tournaments, look at my notes here. We'll talk about just some couple different generic rules of play. I'm sure some of you guys know, but when you're in combat, you basically don't want to look just for the shot placements and legalities and stuff like that. It all comes with practice, so don't be nervous. You kind of have to just jump in head first, see how it goes, but make sure you always are looking for what a legal shot is. A legal shot hits with either stopping of the weapon, a deflection, and percussion. So as you're watching them, listen for those snap sounds as they're fighting. That's how you can tell when a contact happens. It's hard to tell the difference, but there is a difference between a block sound and an actual contact, if you guys have noticed it. Sometimes you'll hear like more of like a poof sound when someone blocks it versus an actual thump. It comes with practice, but just listen for the percussions, see where those shots go and how they deflect. Also watch out for invalid shots. Again, some various people depend on their different levels of how they can feel things, or if they feel like a shot was called. You can still see sometimes might be grazing. You can make sure you call grazes. A good example of that is just like if they go stab and it just barely scratches you, that's not a solid impact. There's no connection with percussion. So invalid shot, draw cuts, pushes, butter. Butters are my favorite. It's kind of like you'll see somebody just kind of smear their sword along them without actually hitting them. It's not a valid shot. Those need to be called where needed. Sometimes players will think it's still a valid hit because they feel the contact, but if it wasn't a definite hit, let the players know. Keep in mind also like combat etiquette amongst firms and stuff like that. They can get fairly heated at times. So if a player is upset or anything, you can always talk to them too. Help explain things, what you saw to them. That way you can act. That way, as not just a reeve, but as just like a good community in general, you guys can discuss what's going on with these combats. And we're not perfect; we're all humans. So if something did happen that you didn't see, it's all good. It happens. Just keep working on it. Let me see. What else can we talk about tournaments? That's pretty much it. Reading tournaments is not that difficult. You're literally just standing there and you're just watching the combats. So we'll go on to battle games. Battle games are slightly different. In the fact that they're not just everything applying towards a tournament reading, such as the shot placements, shots, valid shots versus legal shots. That's all important. But battle games, they're just slightly a little bit more complex. You also have to determine if it's a class battle game, abilities and incaps and the like. Just some things to take into consideration. You want to make sure that the game is also running smooth. If something seems broken, or if there's something causing conflict or issues out there, try to address it when you can. A lot of the times, the reeves are actually the ones also running battle games. So usually reeves can make decisions and calls to modify the games as needed. So as a reeve yourself, if you see like, you know, that like one team is respawning way too quick, they're able to step up and start attacking the other team. Then increase their death count, or vice versa, decrease it if the opposite's happening. So let me just read my notes really quick. All right. So we'll take positioning is a little different, I would say. In tournaments, like I said, you're kind of just standing there and watching the combats happen. But in battle games, you're going to want to move around a little bit at this point. Make sure you get different angles on opponents. and honestly just centralize yourself in the combat itself. I've always seen there's actually two types of reeves during a battle game: a field reeve and then a task reeve. The field reeve just stands around the field and just listens, makes sure everybody's doing proper incants, make sure everyone is taking proper counts. So if you see somebody get hit with an ice ball, keep in mind, okay, that should be about 60 seconds. Listen for that. Make sure when people pop out of frozen, they use the right verbiage. In this case, unfrozen. And that's what the field reeve does. They're just making sure that people are using their abilities properly and people are taking their shots. A task reeve, when I see a task reeve, or I'm consider myself a task reeve, I'll stay back a little bit, but I will focus on my task. In this case, it can be NPC for a quest. It can be keeping track of time. It can be keeping track of health counts. It could be all sorts of things. In those situations, the primary focus should be your task. From experience, I can say that I have a mistake where I'll try to keep track of time and watch everybody fighting, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the game's been going on for 5 extra minutes. Whoops! I'll hide my phone, and pretend nothing happened. In a battle game, you usually want more than one reeve for this reason. At least one field reeve, one task reeve in those cases. Sometimes the battle games don't even need those. But the roles are different, or separate. Does that make sense? So I want to talk about a little bit about magic and abilities and kind of what we need to look out for in the situations. If you need to memorize a couple things, the biggest thing I recommend is like the general rules for the audio verbiage for spells and abilities. Make sure people are enunciating properly. You'll see a lot of people will start doing speed casting and stuff where, what did they say? I didn't hear it. Hey, I just did this. No, you didn't, because you didn't say it right. You either mumbled it, not too loud, or you skipped words. That's honestly a common thing as people get more practice. They'll start saying it faster, and eventually mess up the incants. Most spells, at least verbal spells, when they're pointing out, are within 20 feet. So if you need to memorize a distance, memorize 20 feet. One of our actual Guildmaster Reeves back at our park, what he did was measure out ropes both in 20 feet and 50 feet increments, and he would just move it around the field just so he can see where different positions are and got practice that way. That way, if something happens, somebody says, "No, I'm out of range." No, you are in range. You can confidently say that distance. So that's one thing I keep in mind memorizing. It's just looking for your distances. Weapons and armor. Very few things can break weapons, so it's not hard to memorize that itself. Magic balls, arrows, some abilities will break weapons. Same things when it comes with armor. There isn't much that can actually affect armor other than just a one hit. So if somebody gets hit with the armor, make sure that they're taking the proper counts. 1, 2, or at least they're saying point. If they're not saying point, talk to them about that, because we got to communicate. We got to make sure everything's going on. Especially with armor, it's always difficult to tell. Yeah, I see you smiling over there. Shield crushing. That's actually another good thing to keep an eye on. There's very few things that will actually break shields in of itself, other than large weapons and magic. So keep an eye out on people and how that is. People have a tendency of forgetting that shield crushing is 3 hits to the shield, not consecutive. So if somebody gets 1, 2, walks away, then it gets hit later, that's 3 hits on the shield. The shield is still busted. The players are responsible for that, but it's something to keep an eye out on the field too. States. There's only a handful of states that can affect players, so try to look through those and see if you get those memorized. But most of the time, if it stops you or freezes you, If it is a verbal, that's what I meant to say, not stop and freeze. If it's a verbal, all those abilities are 30 seconds. If it's a spell ball, those are all 60s. If someone gets frozen with the ball, you can immediately think, okay, 60 seconds, start counting. Let's see, range is also something that you can memorize. Most abilities are touch, self, 20 feet or 50 feet. So just keep those in mind in regards to basically that stuff I would recommend to keep and memorize if you need to memorize something. But other than that, that's kind of the gist when it comes to battle game ranking. It's a little bit just a little bit different than tournaments. At this point, do you guys have any questions I can answer really fast? I think I did go through that a little bit too fast.
We're good.
When do you think it's appropriate to tell someone to leave the field when you think they're not following the rules? Like when you go out through
When so
Could you
when is it appropriate to actually tell somebody to exit the field? Honestly, the moment where it either stops becoming fun for themselves or for those around them, or if it's actually getting dangerous, I guess is a good way of putting it. So if somebody actually is visibly getting frustrated or angry, I'll actually walk up to people and be like, all right, get some water, sit down for a moment. If you feel like you can come back on the field. If not, sit them down for a minute. But yeah, basically the moment that they stop having fun or people not.
If someone's having too much fun and they're not. I meant like specifically when someone's not following the rules. Because you know how it is with new people, they don't always catch all the rules, and sometimes they, because battle games get busy and new people will be like, I could probably get away with ignoring that rule. And when you catch that stuff, you go off with a 3-warning thing, typically. I mean, that's how I would do it.
Yeah, that's very case by case basis then at that point. If it is a new person who's only been playing Empire for like a couple weeks at this point, I would approach them, call a safety. That way everybody around you will know to leave you guys alone, and you can just have that one-on-one conversation. But if it's Sir such and such who's been playing for 25 years who is blatantly ignoring the rules, then you give them a warning. If they continue, I'll do 2 warnings, then the third one they're off at that point. Or sooner if they or others around them are not having fun. So that's a little difficult. It is very case by case. Some people can fight upset, maybe some people can't. So you just gotta know your part at that point too. Yes.
Can you explain what the reeve test is?
I'm sorry?
Can you explain what the reeve test is?
What a reeves test is? So a reeves test, that's a hole there. So a reeves test is written and designed by the Kingdom Guildmaster of Reeves, and then spread to Park Guildmasters, and they distribute this test. Usually the reeves test is basically just it's whatever they feel like is a general good question for knowing the rules. I've seen reeves tests where it's like lists all the states and what they do. What's a valid shot? What's an invalid shot? A reeves test is basically just a quick test of the rule book.
It's usually open book.
It usually is. I've seen people who don't. Yeah, that's again case by case based off the Guildmaster of Reeves who writes the test at that point. So, any other questions I can help answer? Anything else you're wondering about reading? Have you guys had some interesting situations that you want to discuss? Think they're great?
What's the best way to perfect your tournament reading for shots?
I am still practicing that myself. It's
Same.
yeah.
That's why I asked.
There has been moments where to answer the question, it's just practice, really. You just gotta get better. I would also recommend fighting yourself. If you know how body mechanics work on a at minimum basic level, you understand that if his arm's over here, I need to watch those shots. Oh wait, he's going for a lower side. I have to keep an eye on that portion to see where he makes contact. If they're doing a high crossover, then you know their shots are going to land in a general area, and you just got to watch those specific spots. So at least a basic understanding of combat yourself is very useful. And even at that point, it's okay during tournaments and battle games. If you are unclear about what's happening, you can call other reeves to it just to help you watch, or even switch positions. Just be like, hey, I can't read this. I can't keep up with them. And if you know somebody who can, you can swap out too. But short answer, practice, and just knowing body mechanics with combat.
I think that's an important point to take into consideration. This isn't I'm not denigrating anybody, but some people do reeve and fight a lot. But it's good as a reeve even if you're not someone who fights. Is like if you're not playing gameplay, sometimes it helps you have an insight to know what it's like to be in the middle of a battle game. You know, a tournament where you're fighting somebody like Vance and Vince, and you're watching those crazy hand blocks and those weird wrap shots, and you having that knowledge and knowing how to fight and what a tournament fight is like makes it easier to when those questionable shots come in to be able to make it tough. When people are like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That happens.
Yeah. So practice is always good. Yeah. Any other questions? Discussions? I like hearing your guys' stories. Alright. Well, just to kind of close it up, I do encourage reading, guys. If you guys ever get a chance, put on a gold sash once a month, take a look and just see how it is. It also gives your other reads a chance to play too. That way they do get that practice that's involved. It is one of the most important things on the field. So keep in mind, be honorable, respect your reeves, listen to them, listen to what they have, and work together just so you guys can have fun. Yeah.
If you were reading all day, can your point still go to a class?
Technically, no.
So I have to go to read.
You have to go to a reeve. By our corpora, you have to play the class in order to get the credit. Actually, I don't think that's corpora. I think that's rulebook. I'll have to double check.
It does say it.
In rulebook? Yeah. I have discussed, or when I was Monarch, or if I was a Reeve or Guildmaster, I'll talk on other people's behalf, explain like, hey, this person is reading all day, I needed them to do something, can they still put their credit into a class? And Monarchs are usually okay with it. Monarchs can, the rule is Monarchs can technically can assign extra credits out, so I've using that as liberty as a Monarch myself to help people who do reeve and who are also NPCs or monsters in battle games. Just saying like, hey, if you're this monster for the day, put your credit in whatever you want. So I would just talk to your Monarch. That's the biggest thing there. Okay. Anything else, guys? I love you all.
Thank you.